Hi, welcome to Elle. Today I'm going to be making a strawberry mango shortcake on a coconut scone. So today we're going to start with our coconut scones. The coconut is toasting in the oven. I'm taking them out now. It's been in about 5 minutes. The coconut toasted in the oven about 5 minutes at 350. This is a gas convection oven. If you're using electric, you're going to want to go about 325. So first, to start the actual scone, we're going to do this Pamela's Artisan Blend. It's a gluten-free flour blend. It's one of my favorites. I use it as a base in almost all of my recipes. If you can't get the Pamela's Artisan Blend, I'm sure you can use the Pamela's baking blend. I'm putting in 2 cups right now. You can also use King Arthur flour. Just understand that it doesn't have the thickener in it. This one uses gargum. So you're going to want to add gargum or xanthan gum in the mix and with it. So I would recommend about a half a teaspoon for this recipe if you're going to use King Arthur's blend. I'm going to be using a cup of tapioca flour. You can use whatever kind of tapioca flour you'd like. I've never had a problem with any specific brand whatsoever, but we're using about a cup here. You're going to want about 2 tablespoons of baking powder in the next step of this recipe. I know that seems like a lot, but this is a gluten-free recipe, and we don't have any gluten to help give the elasticity. We do have gargum, but we aren't going to get a rise otherwise. So 2 tablespoons of baking powder for this recipe. Next, we're going to go ahead and add a half a teaspoon of baking soda to this recipe. Next, I'm just going to add about a half teaspoon of salt. I like the fresh ground Himalayan salt. Truly, you can use anything you'd like. Not a big fan of iodized salt, but you're welcome to use it. I just don't like the bite it has. But only a half a teaspoon. You don't need a lot for this recipe at all. I'm now going to add my liquid ingredients together. I have 1 farm fresh egg. I have 3/4 of a cup of fresh buttermilk. I have 3/4 of a cup of fresh buttermilk I'm adding it to. I'm just going to, you can use a whisk, a fork. It's not rocket science. You can do whatever you like. I'm also going to add about a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And just kind of blend it together. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mix it lightly. I'm adding 1 3/4 sticks of butter to this recipe. I'm cutting it into small cubes and adding it to my flour mixture. I'm going to go ahead and cut it in to my flour mixture with a fork. You can use a food processor. You can use a pastry cutter. You can use whatever you like. I'm obviously not at my own home. I'm on location at this beautiful bed and breakfast. You can see the link below. You're welcome to stay. Pam is wonderful. She owns and runs the bed and breakfast, and it just makes you feel like home here. So I do not have my food processor with me, which is how I would normally do this at home. I am going to go ahead and just use a fork. It's no time at all to do it. So like I said, I'm cutting in the butter. If you're using a pastry cutter, a food processor, whatever you choose to do, just make sure it's about pea-sized, oatmeal size. It's about the same as a pie crust. That way your scones won't be too dry. They'll be nice and flaky. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add a half a cup of the shredded coconut that we toasted off in the oven. If you can see here, I have the coconut that I use. It's a raw coconut that I actually buy at the health food stores. You can use it raw. It tastes amazing raw, but add a little flavor, kind of get the oil toasted a little bit. You can toast it off in the oven. I'm just going to take my fork and toss this into my already crumbled up butter flour mixture. Just give it a light mix. If you can see what my mixture looks like, it's pea size with the little butter pieces and the flour and the coconuts just blended in here nicely. So it's a nice mix. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add my liquid ingredients to this. This was the buttermilk, egg, vanilla mixture. Just going to kind of toss it around. Also, for just a little bit of added flavor to go with our fruit mixture, I'm going to give a squeeze of lime to this. So just mix your liquid ingredients together. Again, this is a lot like a pie crust, so it's going to come together. If you're using your food processor, you're going to not let it get to ball state, obviously like you would with a pie crust, but you're just before that point. You're going to want to pull it out. Remember, this is a gluten-free scone, so you don't want to over-mix it. It's going to, if you like to, you can just come in with your hands and kind of squish it around, get all the moisture into the dry flour. Now, if you remember, scones aren't super moist. It's kind of like a biscuit. So, to kind of help, even though these are very moist scones, we're going to add a little bit of coconut flour just to kind of bring that extra moisture in. This is literally about 2 tablespoons of coconut flour. So it's going to depend on the moisture. So start with 2 tablespoons and bring it together. You don't want it too dry, but you don't want it sticking to your fingers either. And the coconut flour will act like regular flour when you're making biscuits and just kind of draw it together without it sticking to your hands. You really want that to come and bind together for you like a biscuit dough. I'm sprinkling some coconut flour on the counter. Since these are gluten-free, we don't use, obviously, all-purpose flour. This will help bring the dough together. So that we can go ahead and punch out our shape for the dough. Now remember, coconut flour is more sponge-like than other gluten-free flours. So you don't want too much on your recipe. So you're going to put your dough on the coconut flour. Just a little bit, because that has all the butter and yummies on it. We'll mix it in as we're mixing it with the coconut flour on the board. We're going to go ahead and just get this flattened out so that we can cut it into our scone shape. I'm going to flatten it out to about a 1/2 inch thick. Just bring the pieces together so that you have a nice smooth edge if you're going to cut it. Unless you're going to punch it with a cookie cutter punch. You can do that too. You can also roll this, just tear off pieces and roll it into a ball, flatten it out into a little disc, about 1/2 inch thick. We're going to make them about 2 inches in diameter. You can go 3 inches. Just remember, you may want to bring your oven down a little bit. For mine, I'm going to go ahead and do circle shape. I'm going to just use a glass my mother used to do when I was a little girl. If you have to with your glass, you can go ahead and put flour. You can put coconut flour on the outside just so that you can punch them down. But if you see, this is about 2.5 inches. So like I said, 2.5 inches will be fine for this recipe. This recipe yields about 12 to 14 scones, depending on the size of what you cut them at. I'm going to put them in the oven. Again, this is at 350. If you're using an electric oven, you probably want to check the temperature, but it'll probably be at 325 is the best for you. You don't want to burn your flour. This does have coconut in it, which burns easily. So just make sure your oven's not too hot. Altitude does play a difference as well. So obviously higher altitude locations, just double check your temperature before you put them in the oven. Maybe run 2 as a test recipe to start. So I'm going to pop these in the oven for 12 minutes. While my scones are in the oven at 350 for 12 to 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and make the strawberry mango filling that we're going to put on the inside of our scone. I have a pound of strawberries chopped bite-sized. These are farm fresh strawberries I got at the farmer's market. They're so delicious and juicy. I also have some really ripe, delicious mango I got at the farmer's market as well. This is one whole mango, about medium sized. I am going to put in here about a tablespoon of sugar. You can use a little more if you like. I'm also going to use the juice of half a lime in this. So you can also use the whole lime if you want, but this goes with that little bit of lime juice we put in that scone. You can also add lime zest to the scone. If you can't tell, my lime has already been zested. It is in the bottom of the bowl. I just zested half a lime. I've also julienned some basil leaves. This is about 2 tablespoons of julienne basil, 1.5 to 2 tablespoons. The basil just adds such a nice flavor to this recipe. You'll really enjoy it. And then we're just going to toss it together and let all the flavors meld and marinate. Make sure that honey coats the fruit and the sugar coats the fruit really nicely. I'm just going to go ahead and add a pinch of salt. We don't want a lot, just enough to bring out the sugar in the fruit. If you can tell, my berries are starting to look like they're starting to macerate in the sugar, and we're just going to let them sit while the food scones are in the oven. As you can see, my scones just came out of the oven. I've let them cool for about 5 minutes. You can go ahead and cut them in half if you want. Just a tip, if you want them a little fluffier, you can go ahead and add another tablespoon of baking flour. Scones aren't super fluffy, so they are more dense than a biscuit. But these are going to be really moist. So I'm going to go ahead and just use 2 scones. My recipe yielded about 12 2.5-inch round scones. So I have our strawberry mango basil mixture that we made earlier. Please make sure you use fresh herbs. You can use mint in this if you like mint, if you prefer mint. Please go ahead and do that. It's amazing, especially with the lime and the coconut. So I'm just going to pile this up on here. Lots of strawberries and mango. Do another layer on top just to make it that much more decadent. I have some of my fresh basil and one of my beautiful farm fresh strawberries. I'm going to go ahead and garnish the top with it. You can go ahead and put it on the bottom if you want. I like it on top.